Sup y'all? This is going to be a super beginner's guide to making a custom cutscene using the SkyTemple PMD Explorers of Sky hacking tool. For this video, I'm using beta build 0.1.0A11. And the reason why I know this is a super beginner's guide is because I basically am one myself. I started working on this scene about a month ago on the weekends, and prior to that I had no knowledge of how PMD scripts work. I have no computer science background, no programming language knowledge, not even a history with video game modding, aside from fiddling with some 3rd gen Pokemon tools a long time ago, and I'm talking the super basic ones like advanced text. So if this background seems familiar, this is the tutorial for you. I'm going to first show the whole scene, then walk through each individual part that went into the process of making the scene. Timestamps are in the description, since I imagine you'll want to skip around. There's a lot that just happened during that sequence, but the first question I will present is, how did I even find out what script to edit in order to modify the sequence when you load up Waterfall Cave? Right now, I'm at the SkyTemple homepage, which is the first thing you see after loading up your ROM. I'm going to access the script editor by going to the top right and loading it up. There's some other ways that you can do it, but that's the fastest. From here, there's a couple ways you can proceed and shortcuts you can take that are out of the scope of this video, but I'll just go through the method that will probably make the most sense to people that are unfamiliar with SkyTemple. This starts with using the built-in SkyTemple emulator's debug mode. Make sure that enabled debugging mode is checked. I turn off draw entity debug overlay. That can be helpful if you're looking for specific things though. Go ahead and bind your controls in the emulator menu and boot up the game. I'm going to keep the sound off just because it's very loud and I want to make sure that my voice can be heard. So once at the start screen, select New Game. Then, once this loads up, select No to access the Scenario Select menu. There's a decent amount of stuff that you can do in here, and I would recommend watching Parakoopa's video on debugging for more information. That will be linked in the description. But on the topic of looking for the script that starts a certain scene, the first thing that you want to do is make a save state at this menu. This list here is basically a set of checkpoints that load you in with the default team at a certain point in the game. I'll just pick a random scenario, main 13. As you can see, main 13 actually loads up chapter 11, not chapter 13. This is one reason why I recommend to make a save state, so that you can, especially early on, just be able to go back to this menu and try again without sitting through the startup screen, which can take a while. Waterfall Cave is in chapter 5, which is pulled by main 5. Unfortunately, the next step here is that I need to play through the game until I get to the trigger for the scene I'm trying to identify. You do get 3 save states within the emulator, however, after reloading a save state a certain amount of times, the emulator will begin to have issues such as corrupted audio, among other things, that will necessitate you hard resetting and going through the scenario select again, instead of recalling previous RAM by loading a save state. Or at least I'm pretty sure that's how it works. I could be wrong on the details. Please correct me if I'm wrong on that one. I just skipped forward to right outside the mission select. Now it's time to start paying attention to the debug log at the bottom. So let me make that a little bigger. And as you can see, there's 4 checkboxes that you can enable for various detail, though for isolated script-related things, I like to only keep script debug and engine events on. This also happens to be SkyTemple's default, which is pretty nice. Now, it's time to load up the Secret Waterfall story mission. Actually, let me save state first, can never be too careful. And then run over here. Now load it up. Okay, I just paused at the start of the scene here so that I could see what happened in the debug log to lead to the script being loaded. I think a good place to start most of the time, if you don't know what's going on, is with the debug print items. The first that was pulled here being go to scenario dungeon. So going through this afterwards line by line for some context, ground quit is referring to you leaving basically the map of Treasure Town, right? That area of the map that I was in. I left that to go select a mission. The overworld that you roam around in is referred to as ground. So, Treasure Town, ground quit, but there needs to be a new ground start. In order to determine what the new ground start is, the game references script common unionall.ssb. So let me load that up. As you can see, script, I am in the script browser here, common unionall.ssb. So upon loading this up, the first thing I want to point out is that unionall.ssb is gigantic. And I'm not going to pretend that I totally understand what's going on here, because there's a lot. But essentially this is where the bulk of the game runs, and it acts like a giant decision tree to pull various scripts. For my Excel people out there, think of this as like 5 million nested if statements. It's ridiculous. But again, for a more detailed dive into this topic, I would recommend Parakoopa's video on changing game modes, which heavily involves unionall.ssb. That will also be linked in the description. As for these debug prints, I think the best way to try and figure out what's happening is to find where in unionall.ssb that particular debug print lies. But for the sake of time, I'm just going to skip to the most recent debug print in our log, because we're trying to find the last thing that just loaded, right? So we're going to go to the most recent debug log, which is enter scenario dungeon. So look that up. Enter scenario dungeon. If I can type, that's always helpful. You have to hit down a bunch of times usually. For some reason, it's weird. Yeah, but you can see I now got to the correct spot. Enter scenario dungeon. Again, this is our last debug print in this sequence, because all three of these debug prints came up when I loaded up Waterfall Cave, right? Go to scenario dungeon, which went to move world map, which went to enter scenario dungeon. So there has to be something within here that leads us either directly to the script that was loaded or to our next spot inside unionall.ssb. Luckily, there's a key term here that seems to line up with our situation. This MO5, which is short for main 5, and if you remember, main 5 is what we loaded to get to this sequence in the game. And if I scroll down through the rest of enter scenario dungeon, you'll notice that there isn't any other MO5 anywhere aside from at these two spots. So let's first check out Coro event MO503. Event MO503. By the way, when there's this Coro in front of it and you want to look stuff up inside unionall SSB, usually you want to leave that out. I could be here forever scrolling. I know where it is, so I'll just go there. My word. I say as I botch it. There we go. See, the highlight helps you out. Still helpful to control F it. So right here, we reach the jackpot, which is the event bank. This is where multiple scripts are compiled together to form one continuous scene. If you look at the very bottom of the debug log, past enter scenario dungeon, there are 4 scripts being loaded. Long story short, you only need to worry about this last one for now with the .ssb suffix, because the .ssb is the actual cutscene script that is being shown and being played currently. And wouldn't you know, MO5A0301 shows up right here inside this supervision execute acting sub. Since it's the start of this event, that means that ending script MO5A0301 will eventually start MO5D0314, etc., until the event ends and the game transitions back to giving the player control. for those of you following along at home with your own SkyTemple and vanilla Explorers of Sky, you might have noticed that MO503 should contain 2 additional scripts inside this sequence. These 2 scripts were for the beginning and ending of the dimensional screen transition, but I deleted both of these from event MO503. Note that this doesn't delete those scripts from the game's data, only from this particular event. Scripts can be reused in multiple events throughout the game by copying this supervision, execute, acting sub, as is the case with the dimensional screen in vanilla Explorers of Sky, because that appears multiple times throughout the game, right? That's just the same script being repurposed in multiple events. Or, alternatively, a script can be in the game and just not be used at all if it's never called anywhere within unionall.ssb.